So should we start, Dr. Rashad, if you allow me?
Go ahead.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining and welcome to another seminar. We thought while we have got COVID going on, we should uh, learn newer and newer things, and we can share our experience with few of the technology we have been using it from few years. So today is a very interesting topic on CO2 angiography interventions, especially in diabetic foot. Now it's a very vast topic, and I feel personally, as I know nearly every person in the country, every center, there are very few centers who use CO2 angiography as a routine procedure. They may use it in selected cases, but not as a routine. So we started using the CO2 angiography around 4 years back, and we were very slow to start because the staff has to be trained, the setup has to be done. We were not that trained up, but really tell you, in the last 3 years uh, we use it as a routine practice, and especially in the last 1 year we use it. The whole setup takes like 2 minutes. It's just like any other angiography, so we don't actually have to do anything very dramatic or anything important to set up the things, and it's very simple. I'd like to introduce my co-chairperson, Dr. Rashid Besara. He has got a lot of experience on diabetic foot, and he's a surgeon from Egypt, and he's heading the department there, and he's a past president of Egyptian Vascular Society, and he's a very close friend of ours and Venous Association of India. Thank you, Rashid, for joining, and we will be very happy to hear your experience at the end. And we got two speakers, both are vascular surgeons. First, we will take up Dr. Love Luthra. He's going to talk about the basics of CO2 angiography. How does the CO2 works? Because if you don't know the basics, you will not be able to do the CO2 angiography. That's I'll tell you straight on. But once you know the basic, if you haven't done the CO2 angiography, or even if you're doing the CO2 angiography, you'll be amazed where all it can be used. Then we are going to have a one case presentation by Dr. Piyush Chaudhary, and step by step how we do a case and how do we mix the contrast along with the CO2. And then we have a presentation, small presentation by Dr. Rashid Beshara. He's going to share his experience from Egypt. So we really like to thank you, Novomed, who is sponsoring this. And as you know, Novomed supplies the CO2 angiography kits in our country. And I'm really thankful to them to get these kits into the country, because before that it was so difficult to do it hand injections, and of the CO2 it was not very comfortable. And that's why the technique never picked up. So I'll hand over the mic to Dr. Rashid Beshara to do the introduction, and then we can start.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Abur, for having me participate in this webinar. I totally agree that carbon dioxide angiography, in particular in diabetic patients, because those patients, a good proportion of them have impaired renal functions or borderline renal function, and carbon dioxide can prove very useful. I'm not going to your time in a long introduction, and please go ahead with the first presentation.
Okay. Dr. Love Luthra, if you can share your screen, please.
Yes, sir.
You need to share your presentation. Yes, great. If you can go on the first slide. Great, and then you can play. And Vishal, if you can switch off all the mics, please.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Including mine.
I'll start, sir.
Dr. Love, you have to unmute yourself because I muted to you. Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'll be talking about the basics of CO2 angiography, the present and the future. Irvin F. Hawkins is known as the pioneer of modern CO2 angiography. Accidentally, he injected CO2 in the celiac arteries, and fortunately, there were no complications seen in the patient. He then started a routine practice of CO2 angiography in his intra-arterial cases by intra-arterial injections of carbon dioxide for his peripheral vascular disease patients. With the advent of digital subtraction angiography in the late 1980s, the imaging of low density CO2 contrast picked up. Unfortunately, it has been available for the past 3 decades, but it still remains a largely unstandardized technique. Now, coming to the basic physical and chemical properties of carbon dioxide as a contrast agent, it is there is no toxicity. It is a non-allergic. There is rapid, complete intravascular clearance. The contrast is rapidly excreted or cleared from the body by the lungs. Buoyancy, I'll be discussing in detail in the next slide. It is an colorless and odorless gas. Now, coming to the buoyancy characteristic of carbon dioxide, this is one property that we all need to understand very clearly. Basically, when carbon dioxide is injected into the large vessels like aorta and IVC, usually our patients are in supine position. So, because of this buoyancy characteristic of carbon dioxide, it usually settles in the anterior part of the vessel. So, due to this, the lateral branches and the posterior aspect of the vessel is not clearly visualized on the angio, like you can see in the image B. Now, how do we see the posterior aspect of the vessel? Because there are branches that arise from the posterior aspect of aorta and then the lateral branches. So for this, we need to modify the positions, like tilting of the patient on the table. And this is a very important concept that we all need to know. Coming to the other properties, uh, it the basic principle of carbon dioxide as a contrast agent when it is injected is it displaces the equal volume of blood in the vessel in which it is injected. So there is no admixing or dilution of the blood like with the other iodine contrast media that we use. It has lower attenuation. It is an, like I've already mentioned, it is a negative contrast agent, but the disadvantages are it is susceptible to the motion artifacts and bowel peristalsis in the abdominal imaging, and digital subtraction angiography is an important tool for to get good results with CO2 angiography. Now coming to the basic principles that are required when we do a CO2 angiography. Monitoring of patients is very important. The ECG tracings, the pulse oximetry, and vital signs. Capnography is routinely not practiced for all the stable patients, but yes, patients who are intubated, who are high risk, and in which we are suspecting or we may require high volumes of carbon dioxide during the procedure. In that, capnography is very important. Heavy sedation should always be avoided in the patients who are undergoing CO2 angiography, guided angioplasties, and then patient cooperation is must because breath holding during abdominal uh, evaluations and movements in the lower extremity. Because if the patients keep on moving, there will be a lot of artifacts during the angiography. The basic imaging parameters that are required, these are characteristic imaging parameters and are very different for that when we use the iodinated contrasts. Like high MA that ranges between 60 to 90 and KV that ranges between 50 to 70 are necessary. Pulse width of 60 milliseconds or less is important. Dedicated imaging and software package to increase the photon flux is very important. So we need to have a good software and good imaging techniques are required. High frame imaging rate mandatory of 4 to 6 per second is required. Like I've already mentioned, the Achilles heel of CO2 angiography is motion artifact. There is one another artifact known as pseudostenosis. This is basically seen due to fragmentation of the images. This mainly occurs due to unrequired movements during the procedure, and it classically appears as cobblestone appearance. Now, when this happens, we can inject around 1 to 2 ml of iodinated contrast to differentiate whether this is actually a pseudostenosis or an actual stenosis due to the underlying lesion. Now, what are the recommendations? For the lower limb vessels, the legs of the patient should be raised by at least 15 degrees with wedge-shaped cushions. When we are assessing the renal arteries, the ipsilateral side of the body should be raised by 30 degrees with a wedge-shaped cushion. To reduce the invisibility caused by the intestinal gases, some studies have shown that administration of 20 mg of butyl scopolamine is very helpful. The other helpful tactics that can basically give us a good quality image are additional mask images should be taken, sedation and analgesics if and when required, glucagon administration to reduce the bowel peristalsis, and intra-arterial administration of 100 to 200 microgram of nitroglycerin. And this is very helpful for the infrapopliteal angioplasties that we do. Now, the basic indications are like can be used in both diagnostic and interventional angiographies. Patients who are intolerant to the iodized contrast medium, patients with acute chronic renal insufficiencies, renal transplant patients, patients with paraproteinemia, patients with AV dialysis shunts, and in some cases, even for TIPS. Now, I'm just explaining the few of the indications that I mentioned. Like in this, we can see this image shows an abdominal aortic aneurysm. In the first, we can see there is a basically it is an image of a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm, and we have seen there is extravasation of the contrast. So in the third image, a balloon is inflated, and with the endograft, a very clear image is seen, and the lateral branches, as well as there are no endoleaks that are visible. In renal artery stenting, like I mentioned, we can see the stent. We can, before renal artery stenting, we can, with CO2 angiography, we can also see any aberrant renal arteries and the exact anatomical location of the renal artery. After angioplasty with a catheter, a stent is passed, and the last image shows around 1 ml to 2 ml of the contrast was used to see the final check. The next image is of left iliac vein occlusion. In this, CO2 angiography shows the occlusion, the stenosis of the left common iliac vein. Then catheter is passed. Again, an angio is taken using CO2, and then the stenting of the common iliac. Similarly, the uses in the EVAR, we can see in the fenestrated EVARs, we can easily see the side branches and a good endograft that is placed and the final run. In the lower limb lesions also, the first image shows SFA stenosis, and then we've passed the wire, we've done angioplasty, and the last image shows stenting. Now, what are the contraindications of CO2 angiography? Basically, arterial presentations above diaphragm, except SD shunts and in forearm vessels, usually the brachial arteries, we usually don't do CO2 angiographies above the diaphragm vessels. Patients with respiratory insufficiency, patients with venous infections, arterial or ventricular septal defects, pulmonary AV malformations, restless patients, children, and significantly reduced aortic drainage. Now, this slide basically compares the contrast media that we normally use and CO2. Contrast media is a positive contrast media, whereas CO2 is a negative one. Viscosity is more of a iodine contrast media. So the, the molecular structure is also high, whereas in comparison to CO2. The molecular weight of carbon dioxide is definitely more than that of oxygen, but significantly very less than that of iodinated contrast media. The contraindications of contrast media, like we already know very well, allergic reactions, history of renal failure, hyper or hypothyroidism. And I've already discussed the contraindications for CO2 angiography. Now, the doses that are usually used, like for ventral aorta, we use up to 60 to 100 ml. For arteries of the leg, we use 40 to 60 ml. For infrapopliteal diabetic angiopathies, we usually use up to 40 ml. Hemodialysis excess patients, we use up to 20 ml. Venous disorders, 20 to 40 ml. And for visceral arteries and renal arteries, we use up to 20 to 40 ml of the contrast. Now this is one very important and a very interesting slide. Like I already mentioned, that CO2 angiography was introduced but lack of knowledge and lack of equipment, it was not widely used in the past 3 decades. But for the last decade, there have been different delivery systems that are available all over the world. So there are basically 5 types of delivery systems, starting with the hand injection system. That is the most recent one, the historic one, not being used now. Bag reservoir delivery system, very less in practice these days. The other two are the CO Mander Angio Assist portable system. It is costly, not available everywhere. Similarly, the automated injectors. The recent advances in all these systems is the injection is a very control. You can control the volume, you can control the speed of your injection. And then thirdly, the newer systems, they prevent the mixing of carbon dioxide with the oxygen. So the contamination rates are very less. Angioset is one system that is most widely used. I think most of us have been using this, and this is the most affordable system. And now in this image, you can see the basic setup. There is a CO2 cylinder. This CO2 angioset syringe is connected. There are valves that are connected to the cylinder. You can, once you connect it, then with the tubing, you connect one end with the angioset and one with the cylinder. You can control the volume. There is a fixed ratio of the carbon dioxide that we take. We must ensure before injecting it or before connecting it to the sheath in the vessel that we are using that there is no contamination of the air. So this is the most commonly used system uh, presently available and also affordable for all the vascular surgeons. Now, coming to the adverse effects, can be divided into non-serious and serious. Non-serious adverse effects include nausea, abdominal pain. These usually last for 2 to 3 minutes. This is mainly due to transient CO2 trapping within the bowel wherever the gas is injected. But if the symptoms are not relieved for up to 5 minutes, then you must suspect that there is some other issue or the quantity of the CO2 that is trapped is significant. So for these non-serious, the basic treatments that include are rotating patient from side to side, gently massaging the abdomen in cases of abdominal aorta, or properly purging the liquid out of the catheter. Now, coming to the serious ones, they are the air contamination that is the most common, aortic vapor lock, cardiac and pulmonary artery lock, thrombotic atheroembolism, spinal cord ischemias, and neurotoxicity. Mechanism of vapor lock. This is another one concept that we need to understand. This is basically a CO2 bubble is formed when this can either happen because of a large volume of CO2 has been injected or the CO2 injection is given at a very high speed, uncontrolled speed. So once the CO2 bubble is CO2 bubble is formed within the vessel we are inspecting, and this is mainly seen in cases not the seen in patients with infraoperative lower when we dealing with lower leg vessels, limb vessels, mainly seen with aortic aneurysms or patients with a tortuous aorta. There is a tendency that a vapor will be formed within the vessel. So how to suspect this? If patient presents with a persistent abdominal pain, like I said, one of the minor side effects is persistent abdominal pain. It may last for 2 to 3 minutes, but when it is more than 5 minutes, you have to suspect a vapor aortic lock. And the best diagnosis is we do a fluoroscopy check. So once we do a fluoroscopy, we will diagnose an vapor lock, and then we have to treat this immediately. Otherwise, this will eventually end up, the patient will end up having mesenteric ischemia. The preventive strategies are always allow 1 to 3 minutes in between two carbon dioxide injections. And yes, the most common, there is a mixture of CO2 with NO2, nitrogen gas. So always nitrous anesthesias are avoided whenever we are doing a CO2 angio. Usually we do these procedures under local anesthesia, but like I mentioned, patients who need sedation, so always avoid nitrous anesthesias. Now, what are the evolving applications of the CO2 angiography? The future of CO2 angiography. a concept of microbubble enhancement was studied in animals, but now it is a very accepted concept with CO2 angiography. It optimizes the image quality with CO2 angiography and reduces the rate. With this, the quality of the image has significantly improved. Secondly, the rate of complications that were not that significant, but even those minor complications, the rates have significantly come down. The gas is premixed with the patient's blood and dispersed into a bubble mixture. Now, this bubble mixture is used as an injection instead of directly using CO2 in this concept of microbubble enhancement. So it is less neurotoxic, and the best advantage of this over normal CO2 that is used as a contrast is that the vapor lock effect is avoided. High pitch CO2 enhanced CTA also has been a good concept, is a very welcome concept. And I think within a few years, the CT angios that we usually do will start using this CO2 as a contrast media instead of the iodinated contrast medias. The advantages over the ICM contrast medias for CO2 angios is uh, they are technical feasible, they are non-invasive, cross-sectional vascular imaging is very much possible, and yes, definitely the post-EVAR follow-up is very, we can get to do post-EVAR follow-up. Instead of injecting the iodinated contrast medias, we can use this CO2 enhanced CTA for the post-EVAR follow-ups. Now, coming to the conclusion, it is a safe, inexpensive, and highly versatile agent. The contrast agent for choice for the infradiaphragmatic angiographic imaging for patients who have significant renal insufficiencies, who have severe iodinated contrast media allergies. Pro efficiency is easy to gain, and it is very important for us vascular surgeons to understand the physical and chemical characteristics of the carbon dioxide. The techniques should be known to minimize air contamination, avoid explosive delivery. Like I told, there are three systems that have been recently introduced. Angioset is the most commonly used. The good part of that Angioset system is we can control the our speed of delivery of carbon dioxide. And obviously, there should be at least 2 to 3 minutes of delay between the two successive injections of carbon dioxide during the procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Love, for a very nice presentation on basics of CO2 angiography. We can take all the questions at the end because there will be people asking how to do the CO2 angiography and extra. So now Dr. Love, if you can stop sharing your screen, please.
Yes, sir.
And Dr. Piyush, if you can start sharing your screen.
All right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Should I start now?
Yeah, Dr. Piyush, please, you can start.
So today I'm going to present a case of a right leg critical ischemia. So obviously this is a CO2 angiography in peripheral, angioplasty. So the patient, he was a 53 years male who presented with right foot, multiple toes, and heel gangrene. He was having these complaints since last 3 months when he first visited to us. Obviously, he underwent some, pre-op investigations, and some of them I have highlighted. So significantly, creatinine was raised, which was 1.7. So that was, again, a contraindication for like CT scan. Next, there was a wound culture, which showed pseudomonas infection, and COVID was also done, which was negative. And his HbA1c was 7.5% on higher side, and his LFT and coagulogram were in the normal range. So here we can see that he had multiple toes dry gangrene, including the heel. We did the X-ray also, which showed osteomyelitis of all the toes. So our plan was to use non-contrast MR angiography and proceed because his creatinine was very high, which was 1.7. So here is a picture of MR angiography in which we can clearly see on the right hand side that there is a very severe infrapopliteal disease. And also there was a small lesion in the SF. So again, MRA findings, right leg mid SFA lesion. There was only single vessel runoff, which was in ATA, and that was also in the distal portion. And there was a total occlusion of PT and PA shortly after their origins. Here we can see MR angiography only. We can see in the distal part dorsal pedis artery, and there are no vessels, and then there is a formation of PP trunk and popliteum. So we start with the hardware. We used 6 French sheets, 11 centimeter and 45 centimeter. Then diagnostic catheters, 4 French and 5 French. And the wires which we used were Terumo 0.35, command wire 0.14, and stiff wire Lunderquist 0.35. Balloons which we used were 5 into 60 mm and 2.5 into 120 mm for infrapopliteal. So what we did was the right common femoral artery anti-gate puncture, ultrasound guided, and we inserted 6 French sheaths, 11 centimeter. We gave 4,000 international unit heparin because creatinine is high, so lesser dose, and we used CO2 angiography using Angioset. So here we can see in the first picture SFA, and in the second we can see the lesion, in the third again, and in the fourth picture we can see that there is a very tight nerving of ATA at the origin and distal also. Then there is a TP trunk. So this next slide shows that we have crossed already Terumo wire through the lesion in the SFA. And we did the ballooning with 5 into 60 mm balloon. Here we can see again on CO2 angiography that lesion has been overcome. So now, after treating the SFA lesion, we did the hardware change. So Terumo wire was exchanged with stiff Lunderquist wire so that we can exchange the short length 6 French sheath with a long 45 centimeter 6 French sheath. So we placed the sheath in the popliteal artery, and again we did the CO2 angiography. So in this case, we also used small amount of non-ionic iodine-based contrast, which was total of 8 ml in whole procedure. As we use, each ml with 1 ml of normal saline, so total of 16 ml we can say, but actual contrast was 8 ml only. So it was possible because we used long sheath, and when you put long sheath, obviously very small amount you can use of iodine-based contrast in such patients where creatinine is very high. In this slide, again we can compare. On the left-hand side, we can see CO2 angiography showing ATA narrowing and TP trunk. And to make sure that how much is the narrowing, we did conventional angiography with 0.5 ml of contrast, you can see, and it showed beautifully very tight narrowing of the ATA. And there is a TP trunk and total occlusion of peroneal and posterior tibial artery. So now in the distal part of the leg, we can see deformation of anterior tibial artery and very small segment of peroneal artery in distal 1/3 of the leg. So next step, what we did, we took the command wire into the 4 French diagnostic catheter, and we used 2.5 into 120 mm balloon. And we started with anterior tibial artery, whose angioplasty was done. Here we can see after ballooning of anterior tibial artery, beautifully opened, first slide and second slide, middle portion, and third slide, we can see beautiful reformation of the 18 into the dorsal pedis artery. So next, we did angioplasty of peroneal artery. So you can see wire we crossed in the peroneal artery, you can see. And after doing the ballooning, we can see the proximal part of the peroneal artery. And distally in the leg, we can see the distal portion of the peroneal artery above the ankle. Distally, there was a poor deformation. So here's the final result. So first video shows proximal part of the infracubital vessels, then mid of the leg, and third, you can see beautifully formation of the anterior tibial artery into the dorsal pedis. Post-op, patient was kept indoor for 2 days, and immediately he was started on standard drugs, which were aspirin 75 milligram, injection enoxaparin 60 milligram subcutaneous on daily basis, then cilostazol 100 milligram twice daily, and atorvastatin 20 milligrams. After 2 weeks, enoxaparin was replaced by clopidogrel 75 milligram, and we have followed this patient for 4 weeks now. Here we can see second picture is at the time of surgery. His all toes were removed and great toe was removed partially. Last picture shows wound healing at the 4 weeks. And now the heel, the first picture at the presentation, second one at the 2 weeks, and currently at the 4 weeks, you can see the last picture. The wound is healing well and granulating also. Patient is doing well now 4 weeks after the procedure, and as you see, wound is looking very good. Thanks. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Piyush. And now we'll request if you can stop sharing your screen, Dr. Piyush. Uh, uh, Dr. Rashid, you want to start asking the questions to Dr. Love, or I can make up my points later on. So please, you carry on. You ask the question to Dr. Love or Dr. Piyush.
Dr. Love, you made a very good presentation, and you covered
Thank you, sir.
all the basic aspects of carbon dioxide angiography very, very well indeed. Couple
Thank
of
you, sir.
questions.
Yes, sir.
The maximum dose, if you have a maximum dose of carbon dioxide used in a specific patient? That's the first question.
Dr. Love, answer
Sir,
it.
yeah, maximum dose, like I showed, it is maximum is up to 100 ml, sir. Beyond that, it should be avoided. And the amount of dosage to be given actually depends on the area of our interest. Like for the larger vessels, the aorta and IVC, we can go somewhere between 60 to 100. And for renal and mesenteric vessels, 20 to 40 ml. For the low limb vessels, SFA and infrapopliteal vessels, we can go up to 40 ml.
Okay, Dr. Rashid, I will just keep on putting my comments here with my experience, if you are okay with that. And so that, because people are speaking and people are listening about it. So please don't put any questions on the chat. We will, once we have our own discussion, and then we will open it for the people to raise their hand, and we'll unmute the mic for that person. The thing is, there is no maximum doses for CO2. That's the beauty of the CO2. So you can use as much CO2 as you want. So let's say if you want to do use like 200, 300, 400 ml of CO2, no problem. The only thing is, because CO2 is a gas, it gets mixed up with the water in the blood, and that it gets out as a carbonic acid, and and it will just go out of the lungs, as you know. The only thing is, you have to make sure that once you do an injection, you need to just wait for next injection up to 30 seconds to 1 minute. That's the only thing. So we have done like 40, 35, 40 injections with the CO2 in the legs. There is, and there is absolutely no problem. Can you allow Dr. Pranay to come in? He wants to join in, please.
Okay, sir.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Rabul?
Yeah, please. Sorry. Yeah.
Do you have any special tips to avoid pain during carbon dioxide?
Yeah, I was coming to that. There are a few. The biggest drawback I found with CO2 is one is that if you are injecting it below the knee vessels, you will get a pain. So there are 3 points. Well, 3 points I want to make. One is you should always keep around 30 seconds to 45 seconds gap between the injections, by which you will be able to avoid the pain. Second is we have actually stopped doing CO2 angiography under local anesthesia, from last 2 years. So all CO2 angiographies we will do under regional anesthesia. So all these patients will get unilateral spinal anesthesia so that we are not worried about the pain, because CO2 angiography is much more sensitive to patient movement than the contrast. So if you are injecting infrapopliteal vessels, even if the patient moves slightly because of mild pain also, you will not see anything. So that's why, first of all, I feel anesthesia is important. Gap between the anesthesia, CO2 is important. Third is you should always, if you're injecting below the knee, then inject 100 micrograms of nitroglycerin to these patients beforehand. So that really dilates the vessels. And if you really want to increase the visibility at the legs, then just raise the legs by 10 to 15 degrees. And, and don't inject too much. So the syringe, what we don't use the same machine, Rashid, that you are using. We are using a very, very simpler machine, very cheap machine. The machine, what we are using is, it gets attached to the cylinder. It just has a valve which controls the CO2 inlet to our machine. Now, the machine costs around 2 lakh Indian rupees, and that's all. And then you have got a disposable syringe where you can limit how much CO2 you have to use. So what we do is it has got a valve, the syringe gets fitted with a valve, and you can lock it, and then you are just using a three-way to do the CO2, and that's all. And you can inject a particular volume of CO2, a fixed volumes, 20 or 40 or 60 or 80 ml with that syringe, and you don't have to do anything. So it's not very expensive. So the machine is very cheap. The valve is very cheap, and the disposable costs somewhere around 15 to 18,000 rupees, which we can use it 4-5 times. So
It's fantastic. And I would like to re-emphasize what you just said about anesthesia.
Yeah.
We the same. We used to do it under local, but very minor movements from the patient will give big artifact. So now we do carbon dioxide under regional anesthesia nearly always. So that's very good. One additional tip that if you go distally, like if you're doing the plantar arteries or the serous pedis, you can go with a small caliber caster, like the CXI 2.6 French, and you can inject into this very tiny caster very little amount of carbon dioxide, like 2 or 3 milliliters, and that gives you an excellent image without any pain.
Yeah, and I was about to tell you this because that's the biggest property, guys, of CO2. That CO2 does not require, like from a 6 French sheath, if you have, let's say, stent going in, you will not be able to inject the contrast because contrast is very viscous, but you can inject the CO2 and you can still take an angio. Similarly, if you are injecting from a very small microcatheter, let's say 2 balloon, if you have in the plantar arteries, injecting a contrast becomes slightly difficult, but we do inject it. But if you want to inject CO2, as Dr. Rasha said, just inject a small amount of CO2, it gives you a beautiful picture of the plantar arch. Absolutely agree. And I wanted to make another 2 or 3 important points is that we also use this CO2 properties. There are 2 important properties. One is it goes by the side of the stents. So even if you have a sheath, if you have got a big, you want to employ the stent, especially in the renal arteries or SMA, it's become sometimes very difficult. Where is the narrowing? So either you put in a 7 French or 8 French sheath, long sheath, you want to take a stent there, or you can use the 6 French sheath only, but then you can use the CO2 because CO2 has got a biggest property of reflux. So what you can do is you take the wire out, you take the stent inside the SMA, and from the same stent lumen, you inject a CO2. And you will see beautifully, you inject around 20 ml CO2, the CO2 will go inside and it will reflux and shows the ostium very well. So you can see the ostium very well. So that's why a lot of people use the CO2, this property of the CO2 as a refluxing property to see the ostium very well and employ the stent with a lesser sheet, smaller sheets, and without using much contrast. And it's a very important property, I feel, of CO2 which is used.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question, Rahul?
Yeah.
How would you know that you have air contamination in carbon dioxide?
Air contamination.
Yeah.
Oh, it's very difficult. That's the biggest problem. You see, CO2 is a colorless and odorless gas. So if you inject an air with it, that's not a very good thing to happen. So that's why the system what we use, is it's all air sealed. So we don't open it up to the air. And when there is a protocol here, before you inject the first CO2, there are two important things. You need to remove the air, you need to remove the water, because CO2 is a compressible gas. So if you have any water in your tube, which is there, and if you don't flush it with an air, then it can cause a very high pressure and can injure the vessel. So that's why what we do is we have 5 cycles of CO2 pass through that convoluted tube, what we have, and then we attach it to the catheter and we make it airproof. So there is no air in between us. And so it's all connected.
That's fantastic. I just would like to add that
Yeah.
carbon dioxide dissolves very rapidly. So if you do an injection and you find a little bubble that's sitting somewhere, not moving, that's probably have air contamination, and you must check your system.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Okay, Dr. Rashid, any other questions? And there are what we are trying to, another very important point I want to make here is all the patients who come to us with, let's say, creatinine of 1.3, 1.2, 1.3, which are just borderline. So there are two techniques what we are recently using from nearly 2 years now. One is an MR non-contrast angiogram. So if the patients can, get an MR done. So it's a totally non-contrast angiogram. And if we can visualize the whole of aorta and the vessels up to the foot, and we can actually plan our interventions according to that, because we do planning for all the patients beforehand. So we don't do diagnostic angio. We stopped doing diagnostic angios like 9 years back, 10 years back. So we use non-contrast MR. That is very important. Another very important technology which is come up is a dual source CTA. So dual source CT angiogram. So that's also very important investigations where it uses only 30 ml of contrast. So instead of an angiogram using 100 ml of contrast, it uses a very small amount, 30 ml of contrast, by which you can get the whole platform into it. So either of these technologies, I think all the centers where they are doing these diabetic foot interventions, they should have these two technologies by which you can really get on with it without injuring the kidneys.
Question to Dr. Chaudhary. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
I enjoyed your case. It's a very nice presentation of a difficult tibial artery disease with very bad foot, which ended up very nicely. You used a diagnostic, 4 French diagnostic caster to do the recanalization of the occlusal anterior tibial and later the peroneum. Do you use smaller caliber support casters? There are many of them. I don't know if they are available in your region.
Yeah.
We do use smaller catheters. If you have to go, let's say, we have to go some retrograde in these vessels, we have to go. Then we have this Rubicon catheter we have, and that we can use for the smaller vessels.
Yes, Dr. Rashid, what we do is we don't take the catheter, 4 French catheter into the arteries at all. I think, there was something, 4 French catheter, what we use is we take 0.14 wire to cannulate sometimes the anterior tibial artery or sometimes the posterior tibial artery, because sometimes the osteums are on the sides and you are not able to get through it. And I don't like bending the wire at all. And so we use 4 French catheters to cannulate and put the wire inside it. And then we take the 4 French catheter out, and then we put in a directly either a Rubicon over it as a support catheter, but that also we put it very rarely. Mostly we take directly the balloon, inflation balloon on the top of that, and we use the balloon as a support. So, only in very few conditions we use, 0.14 Rubicon as a support.
That's
So
very
we-
important because
yeah.
people who use 4 French or 5 French test in tibial arteries,
No, no, you
some of
should never enter it. You should
yes,
never take this catheter inside this distal artery. Never. It's a disaster.
very good.
Yeah. And I feel, we are not using CO2 in AV fistulas at present. And, I think that's what our next mission is, this month or next month, that we are going to start doing, because we are using ultrasound so much in AV fistula angioplasty now so well, that 90% of our work is done on ultrasound, AV fistula angioplasties. So, but we thought, we should try combining an ultrasound with a CO2 and then see, because we are using around 10-15 ml of contrast only. So that's why we never felt the need of using the CO2 in AV fistulas. But I think we should try and see, how does it work. So we will get back to you on that. So we haven't had used it. Is there any questions? I don't know if I can take it from the south.
Sir, yes, sir. I have copied some questions on the notepad.
Notepad, okay.
Yeah, so if you want, I can share my screen, or else I just read out and you can answer to them.
Yes, please. You can read out and one of us will answer.
Sure, sir.
Dr. Rashad can take 1 or 2 questions. Dr. Piyush, Dr. Love, please.
Okay,
Carry on.
sir. So first question is how to set up a low-cost angiography unit.
Okay.
I think Dr. Abul will answer this question better than me.
Yeah. So I think I've already answered this question. It cannot be more cheaper. When I was planning to do the CO2 angiography 8 years back, and all these bigger machines, were available everywhere. It was so expensive. These machines used to cost like 12 lakhs, 13 lakhs, and I thought it's not practical possible. So I'm really thankful that 4 years back, this Nomed company got the CO2 angiography set into the country. And, it was very cheap at that point. Actually, we got it for 1.3 lakhs at that point. And of course, it's quite a long time back. So, but I think this is the cheapest way you can do it. But yes, if you want to do it, you can just take a CO2 cylinder and in your hospital and can set up an air-free network. But I personally feel, because if you just use a simple plain syringe, then the air can enter inside it, and it's not foolproof thing. And if you want to do it as a routine practice, then it's better to invest these 2 lakh rupees in your practice. I feel.
Yes, sir. So second one is from Dr. Nirmal Kanti Ray. He's asking for lower limbs maximum, how much CO2 used?
We have already answered this question.
Okay.
Yeah.
The third
You
one
can
is
as you want.
okay. Third one is from I think name is mentioned. What are the hardwares?
I think that's also covered under the presentation. CO2 angio set and the CO2 disposable kit, which we are using. And this is the only kit which is available in our country, as far as I know. And so there are only one hardware and one software. That's it.
Okay, so last one is again from Dr. Nirmal. Any measures taken before this procedure in this patient, tibial artery and peroneal artery diseases?
Sorry, come again.
Yeah, any measure taken before procedure in this patient, tibial artery and peroneal artery diseases.
Dr. Rasha, you want to take up?
I don't understand. So if you like to go ahead and answer.
Yeah, basically, I think what the question is, what precautions we should take if we want to do the interventions on these infrapopliteal vessels. It's the standard precautions, you see. One is, as Dr. Rashid already said, we should never take the bigger catheters inside these vessels. And what we do is, we try to be, there are a lot of people who do the interventions with 0.35 wire. I personally take up only 0.14 wire into these vessels. Second is you have to be very gentle, because once you start becoming slightly aggressive, you will make this arteries rupture. And third is also see how these vessels behave. There are some vessels which gets into vasospasm very fast. Some are very atherosclerotic. They will not get into vasospasm. So if they're getting into vasospasm, put in a nitroglycerin inside it. Fourth is always take, in Indian setups, the size of the vessels normally is around 2 to 2.5 millimeters. So that you can do. Next is you should take long balloons. You should not take like a balloons like a 40 or 60 size in the length, because longer balloons gives you a better inflation, and if you use the shorter balloons, it cause more dissection, and you will get a thrombus inside it.
Yes, sir. So that's all the questions.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And Dr. Piyush, anything you want to pass on the comments, or anything you want to add on?
Just that we also tried to open the posterior tibial artery in this patient, and we were not able to open that. So that's why there were angios only for peroneal artery and anterior tibial artery.
Sure. And we do a lot of retrograde in our setups. One retrograde is done nearly every week. Anteriors, posteriors, and perennials. So we are quite aggressive in that form. So we try to make at least 2 arteries run off into the foot if possible, and or if one major artery into the foot, filling all the vessels, depending upon what is the size of the wound in the foot. So we will definitely, should take up a lecture on, on retrograde punctures, how to do it, and how exactly we should go about it, and what all hardwares we should use in the next sittings.
There is one question here. Is it mandatory to keep patient indoor, meaning inpatient for 2 days? If you don't mind, I'll answer this. We actually do all the procedures as outpatients, so they stay 4 hours after the procedure and go home. I'm not sure what's your policy, Dr. Raoul.
No, we keep all the patients nearly. You see, I think it's a type of a. Most of the patients are in. You can imagine they are in septicemia. Most of these patients, and what our policy is, we have been practicing is, the patients comes to us. We do all the workup on the same day. If they can possibly admit, because normally our lists are full, so we don't admit them on the same day. So we give them injectable antibiotic because they're in sepsis. We admit them next day, possibly, or on the day of surgery, maybe day after. On the day of surgery, they get admitted, they get operated. All of them, nearly 90% of them, because they have got. So once we do an angioplasty, we do the debridement in the same sitting immediately after that. So that's why all these patients, because of the comorbidities, diabetic, heart disease, nearly more than 95% of the patients has coronary artery disease and renal failures. And so we admit all these patients into the ICU for overnight observation. And next morning, they will get into the ward, and we will observe them. Next morning, we can discharge them. If the patient has financial issue, we discharge them next day. But most of the patients, they come from approximately 200 to 250 kilometers away, nearly every patient. So that's why we try to do the first dressing ourselves. So that's why next morning they're in the ward. They are on injectable antibiotics. We monitor their renal functions and CBC, make sure that they are absolutely fine. And next morning, 9 o'clock, we do the dressings. We apply the vac pump if required on the same day. And because what we are experiencing is, if you try to apply the vac pump on the first day, the chances of bleeding is very high. So this we have developed the policies over a period of years. And because these patients will not be able to come back for 6 days at least, because they're very far off. So second day, we apply the vac pump on the wounds, and we send them home if they are big, and they come back, after 5 to 6 days. After 5 to 6 days, once they come up, most or 90% of them, we stop the injectable antibiotics, and we will modify their antibiotics on phone on the third day, depending upon the culture which we have taken from the theaters. It's a very protocol, very systematic things which follows. I don't have to do actually anything. And and 6 they come up for the back change or the wound dressing. If the wound is very small, if it's a simple plain angioplasty, those type of patients we normally don't get. And if they are there, we discharge them next day. But we don't do anything as a daycare. Not diabetic foods. No.
Yeah. I think that the heart of the question is whether the use of carbon dioxide necessitates overnight stay. So if you have a patient that does not have toxemia, that does not have associated important comorbidities, would the use of carbon dioxide per se necessitate admission to hospital? What do you
No,
think?
of course not. Of course not. Definitely not. As I told you, the CO2 will actually be beneficial. And, if I have to do the daycare, then I will use the CO2 because CO2 will wash off in another 10 minutes from your body in one blood cycle, they say.
Good.
Dr. Love, anything you want to add on? You have the mic. You need to switch on your mic. Your mic is switched off. Yeah.
Yeah, to the last question that you answered, sir, what are the prerequisites or any specific preparations that we do? Like everything you mentioned, like I mentioned in the basic principles slide of mine during my presentation, that in case there are motion artifacts or the patient is moving and we are not getting a clear picture or desired image that we want, we can elevate the leg for 15 to 20 degrees. So for infrapopliteal angioplasties, that would give us a better picture. And secondly, in case the vessels are in spasm, so we can give 100 to 200 micrograms of nitroglycerin. Rest all the software stacking should always be good, and rest other things you mentioned, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
That's it.
Dr. Rashid, anything you want to add on?
Oh, that's fantastic. I'd like to thank you for having me participate. Very
No.
interesting, very presentation, and very useful. I'm very glad that we could exchange some information.
No, thank you, Dr. Rashid. And we learned a few tips and tricks from you. And I think we will add it in the practice. And, every small thing, it makes a difference over a period of time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank